So we're closing out this study on whether or not the Bible is trustworthy. Is it without error? Arrive at a translation in 21st century English of a passage, a chapter of the Bible which best reflects the original text. Then you have a chance of figuring out how valuable it is by reflecting what the authors actually originally wrote, by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic. How many conversations I have with people all here and there and there, and they have their own interpretation. And I said, well, we don't care what you believe, and we don't care what I believe. We care what the author is actually saying. You can have no concept of whether you want to believe what he says or not. At least report in an honest manner what he's saying. Observe and report. My seminary professor used to say all the time. So, let's go to keep verb tenses. Consistent with the original text by referring to Greek, Hebrew grammar books and dictionaries, comparing these with the 7 or more versions in order to be faithful to the verb form of the original text. Now, the Young's literal translation and other versions often attempt to be faithful to the original verb form. Compare what it says with the NASB and New King James Version as well as other versions, 21st century or 23rd century English, until you arrive at a determination of the closest version of the 7+ versions, however you want to choose, to the original text within the normative rules of English language. Original text, get your interlinear, online, and context and logic. Refer to Hebrew Greek dictionaries and grammar books when questions arise as to the proper translation of the verb tense of the original word. Oftentimes I use Expositor's Bible Commentary and Bible Knowledge Commentary and a few others, and they explain these things. So you get an education, point for point. Note that it is better to have an awkward but accurate sentence than a smooth-sounding inaccurate one. A lot of these NIV sometimes makes the mistakes that way. They try to sound very efficient and easy to read, but the sentence Paul or whomever wrote is complicated. You can't make something easy if it's a complicated idea, and then you'll miss something. Have in brackets the changes you make to the translation in accordance with the normative rules in order to signify your particular interpretation, that people see that, and you can hold yourself accountable. Reference the reasons for the bracketed changes with footnotes, or however you want to do it. As you determine the best version translation of each verse of the original text, put the verses together in the order that they appear in the passage, chapter under study. We have resources. NASB, New King James Version, Holman Standard, NIV, King James Version, Authorized Version, Young's Literal Translation, LXX, Septuagint. Take care to change archaic words into 21st century English so people will understand what you're talking about, which appear in the last 3 versions. If you don't understand King James Version, don't use the King James Version. Hebrew and Greek lexicons and grammar books come with a complete biblical library. Other Greek, Hebrew lexicons and grammar books are available online or at bookstores. You can click on this and just find your own. Actually, just do a Google. Make sure the lexicons are not limited to Strong's meanings only, because that's just the King James Version. Textus Receptus. And actual Webster's Dictionary has more than the meanings that Strong's has, and you apply the proper meaning to the word according to the context. Got interrupted by a phone call anyway. Make sure that lexicons are not limited to Strong's numbers only, because that's King James only, and all available meanings should be listed in the dictionaries. Use Webster's in order to allow you to match the best available meaning with the context at hand to make up your own mind. Versions are not perfect. Or in the Greek or the Hebrew, you use the Greek or Hebrew lexicon that includes all the meanings for all the versions, for all the words. Arrive at your own personal commentary of the passage by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic one verse at a time, grouped together in accordance with the verse order, then topics and subtopics. Make careful observations, following the order of the verses, grouping the verses together according to verse order, followed by topics, subtopics, so to keep your observations organized. Use an outline format such as Roman numeral 1, capital letter A, 1A, I. I've stayed away from that. It's time consuming. I'm getting too old for that, but I should go back to it so that when a verse or topic is changed, your observations will be easier to read and edit. I used topical headings as well that are more detailed. Again, I'm getting older. You can improve on my technique. It's easier for people to find out where you're going with a topical heading like a newspaper heading. Compare your observations with more than one commentary, making sure you only use a commentary's observations that are directly related to the words in the passage at hand and not from elsewhere, no matter how true. Use topical points by which commentaries organize their observations, but accept only those which are in accordance with the normative rules of language, context, and logic, those that are limited to the context of the verse in hand. Work those observations from commentaries into your own personal words in order to verify in your own words and your own mind that what you use is strictly in view in the verse and passage at hand and not from elsewhere. We have all these resources: Bible study manuals, Expositor's Bible Commentary, Bible Knowledge Commentary, the Complete Bible Commentary, and others available online in bookstores, electronically from wordsearchbible.com. That was now that was purchased out, so it's no longer available. That way, you're sorted out in your own mind, and you practice in your own words to share your faith. But you can't memorize a commentary's commentary. Just read what it has to say and put it in your own words. And then you'll be familiar with it because that's how you think, making sure it reflects just the words of the text and not something from elsewhere. The Septuagint Old Testament Greek Bible is available online. Note that most commentaries digress beyond the context of the verse in hand, so to such an extent that they are not worth using on a regular basis. Certain specific issues with a Bible verse may be researched for reading online and compared with Bible difficulty books. Carefully critique commentaries and topical research studies to make sure the comments you decide to use from them are in accordance with the normative rules of language, context, and logic, staying within the confines of the context of the verses at hand, proving out each point with the proper evidence. I'm doing this right now. I'm starting off Hebrews chapter 5. And it's difficult. I have to get everything in order. I want the commentaries that I use there. I want the verses that I use there. And then I use my main computer, this one here, where I can look up the verses, look up the Greek and the Hebrew, and the various 7 versions I use, and carefully consider, for example, how Hebrews 5:4, full grown and not perfect. Talion can be perfect or full grown. But we're talking about a perfect human being or a full grown or mature. I like the word mature there, see? Put in brackets, mature. So, this process requires a lot of time, prayer, meditation, review, changes, editing of all kinds until you're satisfied you have covered all that each word, verse, passage has to convey. Don't be in a hurry. You don't need to make a publisher's date for your work. I love when I get on the bus, I open up my little touchscreen laptop so it doesn't break in the bouncing bus, and I just kind of sit there and meditate on the word and bounce around. Sometimes I miss my stop, but I'm really focusing on how I'm going to explain this verse and the next verse and the next verse and how they work together. A lot of times I get to verse 5 and I want to go back and review 3 and 4 to see how the continuity works, because I may miss something. And there you go.